all the leaders belonging to the various parties, I take them with their names with due respects. Shri Ghulam Nabi Azad ji, Tiruchi Shivaji, Satish Mishra ji, Professor Yadav, Derek O'Brien, Navneeta Krishnan ji, each one of them I'd like to thank because they have very readily come to cooperate and also, as was reminded by Derek, on a Friday agreed to take into consideration this bill, understanding the importance of the bill itself. And therefore, let me start by specifically thanking each one of them for having been very cooperative in sitting through this consideration. So primarily, before I start, there were 12 members of Parliament who spoke in detail about the bill. I thank each one of them. They have raised certain very issues which are critical to the implementation of this scheme itself, and I shall answer some of the questions, provide the clarification also in a very brief manner, considering that I have not been asked to speak elaborately. So I have regrouped the issues that have been raised by members into broad 12 categories. I'll quickly go through each one of them in such a way that it answers several members. First was this important issue, whether because we went on issuing a lot of clarifications based on what was presented and tabled in the Lok Sabha, FAQs, so that people will get to know what is actually in the scheme as an explanatory. Reference was made to Circular number 7 of 2020, wherein the FAQs have been elaborated. Question was raised, was it not a breach of privilege? I would like to just read one line from that FAQ, Circular number 7, 2020, that even as we elaborated on all these, I'm quoting, sir, the line that has been mentioned even before the FAQs have been explained. These clarifications, I quote, these clarifications are, however, subject to approval and passing of the bill, Vivad Se Vishwas, by the Parliament and receiving the assent of the Honorable President of India. That's been stated up front much before the details have been given, and therefore I want to assure the members that there is no breach of privilege. We've only tried explaining things to the people, and that is clearly stated up front as a disclaimer. Second is, sir, issues about setting targets. Have you brought pressure on the heads of the tax assessees? Have you brought pressure on the tax authorities themselves so that if their ACRs are going to be linked with the performance and so on? Sir, first of all, it is the outreach program which is going on, saying what is the scheme about and why should they encourage the assessees to come on board. So it is for the target which has been set more for the outreach activity rather than say make every assessee come into the scheme. So let that be very clear, sir. Of course, we want our officials to be taking every scheme of the government seriously, but not to the point of compelling anyone to come into the scheme. Third, sir, is the issue of, is there no end date given? Has it got too short a time? Is it too quick to be implemented? When will you close it? Is there any statement there? So I would want to assure that the date given 31st March is for payment without any kind of penalty or additional charge or anything of that kind, with additional 10% between 31st March to June 30th, with additional 10% payment over the given formula of the scheme, people can join in. However, the bill, what is important here is the bill authorizes the government to notify the end date. So depending on how this whole thing is going, based on the suggestions coming from the tax assessees themselves, the notification will be issued subsequently. So then the question of, there is a confusion. Are there two dates? 31st March, Honorable Member Navneeta Krishnan ji asked us this question. Are there two dates? 31st March is one, 30th June is one. What is it? As I explained, sir, to enter into the scheme and pay the money as per the formula given there, 31st March is the date given, for which, of course, the FAQs have been on public domain for a very long time now, since after we tabled it in Lok Sabha. But then with a certain amount of penalty, which is 10% additional charge till 30th. So the date 31st has, without any kind of additional payment, and beyond 31st till 30th June with 10% to be paid as an increased charge. That is where two dates have appeared. There are no confusion about it, but eventually the end of the scheme date will be notified by the government, and for which this bill has empowered the government to carry on with that. So then the other question which was raised is the wealth tax also included in this? Meaning, are taxes laid on the wealth of people also included in it? So this is a scheme which is being brought in for the Income Tax Act. So only those disputes which pertain or come under the Income Tax Act will be taken up, not those which are coming under wealth tax. So I want to just draw the attention of honourable member who raised that. Now, also very important, a question which was raised was, all right, you're giving us the scheme, this is because there have been disputes. But why at all the disputes? Are you doing anything to reduce the root cause of litigation and so on? So I want to assure members that reducing the discretion which is in the hands of the tax authorities, and who also have high-pitched assessments for any assessee, and then also further pursuing it and so on, all this is now coming to literally to a zero, because the government has now used technology, and we are bringing in faceless assessment. Not just faceless assessment, but also appeals will now become faceless. So through the email, through questions which are asked, through a group of people who will be understanding the faceless assessment scheme and who will be guiding them, this will happen. And therefore, the question, very pertinent question asked, that the litigation's root cause should be addressed. The government is definitely taking all steps towards addressing the litigation, reduction of litigation being a priority. So then the next one is about, are you going to allow cases which are already under prosecution? I just want to highlight the fact that under prosecution cases, sir, if the prosecution is based on Income Tax Act, and therefore the tax authorities have taken you for a prosecution, of course you will be excluded. But if you have prosecution under various other acts, you are welcome to join the scheme. So the exclusion is only for those prosecutions which are taken under this Income Tax Act by the tax authorities. So before I come to this issue which Member Tiruchi Shiva has raised, I'll move over to the question which was raised by Member Amar Patnaik about the transfer pricing related matter. The secondary adjustment to the provision only applies for assessment year 2017-18 and subsequent years. It does not apply to earlier years to which most of the transfer pricing cases pertain. So that specific clarification for the question related to transfer pricing, sir. The one very repeatedly raised issue was about why only cases which are below 5 crores and not those which are above 5 crores are being included. Sir, I want to make it clear here that these cases have been excluded. Those above 5 crores have been excluded so that large evasion related cases and fraud cases do not come into the scheme and take advantage of this scheme. That is why we've limited it to the topmost extent of 5 crores and not beyond. So we do not want disputes which involve larger sums to take advantage of the scheme much before we can even establish what is behind those kind of disputes. So the last 2 points which I would like to highlight, just so that my Parliamentary Affairs Minister is not worried if I'm taking too much time, is the issue of, is this going to provide amnesty to those who are covered under the demonetization related cases? Honorable Member Wilson raised that question. So this, first of all, this scheme is not an amnesty scheme at all, but it is the taxpayer has to pay a certain tax amount, and that tax amount, the undisclosed cash deposit during demonetization, is liable to be suffering a tax of 75%. Hence, the taxpayer has to pay 75%, the demonetization related people. The taxpayer has to pay 75% of tax for settling the dispute regarding the cash deposits which have been made during the period of demonetization. So it's not an amnesty for anybody. And lastly, what happens to those who have paid tax under protest? Sir, it is mentioned in the bill that if the amount already paid by the taxpayer exceeds the amount payable by the taxpayer under the scheme, refund shall be granted to the taxpayers. So those who are paid with the protest, if the amount paid already is much higher than the tax which they have to duly pay, then you have this relief of the refund coming in. Lastly, sir, the issue of the language, the use of language as to why Vivad Se. Actually speaking, sir, yes, it is not put in the bracket. The Direct Tax Bill 2020 is the bill's name. The Vivad Se Vishwas should have been technically within brackets just for making it clear. I fully respect the view given by Tiruchi Shivaji and also Member Wilson. I do respect that, yes, bills can ideally, even I would love to have them in each one of the regional languages, but not really intended to impose any particular language. What I can, of course, give us an assurance to the honourable members who have raised this issue is through a circular, I'll ensure that all regions do use it with the local language and also advertise it through a local language than to have just that one expression in Hindi, which may not, I agree, be understandable by many of the regional language speaking tax assessees. Sorry, it won't substitute because again I will have to go back to the Lok Sabha to seek the consent and so on. So because it has a practical difficulty, no.
Okay.
No. I've heard that, sir. I would appeal to the members.
Please be sit down.
I've heard both Honourable Member Wilson and Honourable Member Shiva. Yes, he reminded me, I'm also from a non-Hindi speaking state. I do understand the importance of mother tongues and regional language. In this case, I yield by saying, I give an assurance that we will have circulars going to all the regions to highlight each of the points in this scheme in the respective regional languages. Thank you, sir. With that, I seek the support of all the honourable members and once again thank all of them for having been so cooperative.
तरक्की कभी ये नहीं पूछती कि आप कहां से आ रहे हो, बस ये पूछती है कि आप कहां जाना चाहते हो। तरक्की कभी ये नहीं पूछती कि आप कौन हो, बस ये पूछती है कि आप क्या बनना चाहते हो। तरक्की आपको कभी नए रास्ते दिखाएगी, तो कभी नए दोस्तों से मिलवाएगी। बस आपको तय करनी है आपके तरक्की की रफ्तार, एक नई सोच और हर रोज कुछ बेहतर करने की प्रेरणा, अपने लिए और अपनों के लिए। हर रोज कुछ बेहतर।
रास्ते तो हर मोड़ पर बदल जाते हैं, पर दिशाएं कभी नहीं बदलती, जैसे कि हम और हमारा साथ। हर दिशा में आपके बच्चे के साथ, आज, कल और हमेशा के लिए। सील गंगा स्मारक इंटर कॉलेज, मैनपुरी रोड, माड़े, सिकोहाबाद, जनपद फिरोजाबाद।